I was born in the land of Egypt, beneath a sun that never failed us, in a nation that believed itself eternal. My father always said, our gods walked with us. My mother said the Nile was the breath of life. And until the day the river turned to blood, I believed them. I remember the morning it happened. I went to the riverbank with my father, as I always did. The fishermen were already shouting, pulling their nets from the water. But the nets dripped thick, dark, red. The river smelled of iron, warm, wrong, alive in a way water should never be. My father grabbed my shoulder so tightly it hurt. "Don't touch it," he said. His voice trembled. The priests came running, chanting, burning incense, waving their staffs over the river. They said it was a sign from the gods. They said Egypt would endure. They said Pharaoh would restore order. But the river bled for 7 days. And something inside me whispered that our gods were silent. Then came the frogs. At first, we laughed. Children chased them through the streets. But soon they were everywhere, in our beds, in our ovens, in the temple itself. Their croaking filled the night like a curse that would not end. My mother barely slept. She kept brushing my hair back, touching my face, as if checking that I was still there. I didn't understand why she was so afraid. Then the lice came. Then the flies. They swarmed like living shadows, crawling into our food, our clothes, our skin. People screamed in the streets. Priests burned incense until the air was thick and choking. They sacrificed animals day and night, begging the gods to answer. But the gods did not answer. Pharaoh sent messengers through the city, shouting that Moses was a liar, that the plagues were tricks. Some people cheered. Others whispered that the Hebrew God was real. My father silenced them with a glare. But at night, I heard him praying under his breath. Then the livestock died. The smell of death rolled across the fields. Farmers wept in the streets. Markets emptied. People began to starve. I asked my mother why the gods allowed this. She pressed her hand over my mouth and shook her head. "Do not question them," she whispered. Her eyes were full of terror. Then came the boils. People collapsed in the streets, covered in sores. Even the priests could not stand. My father kept me inside. He paced the house like a man guarding something precious. He snapped at anyone who came near me. I didn't understand why. Then the sky broke open. Hail fell like stones of ice and fire. Flames burned where the hail struck. Houses shattered. Fields burned. The screams of people rose like smoke. Pharaoh said it was a test. He said Egypt would not bow. But I saw fear in my father's eyes for the first time. Then came the locusts. They devoured everything the hail had spared. The land turned to dust. People cried out in despair. The priests sacrificed more animals. The temples overflowed with offerings. The air stank of incense and fear. And then, to darkness. Not night. Not shadow. A darkness that felt alive, a darkness you could feel pressing against your skin. No sun, no moon, no stars. Just a suffocating void. People screamed in the streets. Some clawed at their own faces. Others curled on the ground, unable to move. I asked my father why the darkness felt like a hand closing around us. He told me not to speak. He held me close the entire night. And in the darkness, I felt something moving. Not a man. Not an animal. Something ancient. Something watching. When the light returned, I asked my parents a question I had been afraid to ask. Is the Hebrew God the true God? My father shouted at me. My mother cried. They told me never to speak of that God again. Their voices shook with terror. I didn't understand why. Then came the final night. My father locked the door. My mother lit every lamp in the house. The neighbors wailed. The priests chanted until their voices broke. People smeared oils on their doors, hung charms around their children's necks. My father held me close. My mother kept touching my face, whispering prayers through trembling lips. Outside, I heard something walking through the streets, slow, steady. I heard the doors open. I heard the screams. I heard wailing rise house by house. The sound was getting closer. I asked my father why everyone was so afraid. He didn't answer. He just held me tighter. The house was a small island of light. My mother had piled cushions against the door. She hummed a lullaby that had always made the world seem safe. My father sat very still, his jaw set. Outside, the city had become a chorus of grief and panic. I could hear the priest's voices falter and then stop. At first there was a knocking. Not the polite knock of a visitor, but a heavy, deliberate sound that made the house tremble. My mother froze. My father rose and went to the door, but he did not open it. He pressed his back against it. The knocking came again, and then the sound of someone moving from house to house, a slow, patient tread. I wanted to peek through the crack in the shutters, but my mother's hand clamped over my mouth. Her fingers were cold. Then the cries began. Not the quick, sharp cry of a child, but a long, keening sound from the very bones of the city. One by one, the houses around us stilled with it. The sound rose and rose until it was a wave that crashed against our walls. My father sank to his knees. He whispered something I could not hear. My mother sobbed into my hair. I felt the world tilt. I do not remember the moment my brother's name was called. I remember only the way my father's shoulders shook, the way my mother went still, the way the light in the lamp guttered. For a long time we sat like that, listening to the city breathe in and out, to the distant wails that would not stop. When the dawn came, it was a pale, thin thing. The sun rose as it always had, but it seemed to look at us with new eyes. In the days that followed, the city changed. The markets were empty. The priests no longer chanted with certainty. Pharaoh's men moved through the streets with a different gait, as if the weight of what had happened sat on their shoulders. Some of our neighbors left at once. Others stayed, stunned, their faces hollow. My father walked through the house. He touched the table, the doorframe, the place where my brother had slept, as if to make sure they were still there. My mother would not stop crying. She would not let go of me. People came to our door to ask for help, for bread, for water, for comfort. My father gave what little he could. He spoke in low tones to men who had once been his equals and to strangers who had once been beneath him. I saw him weep once, in the market, when he thought no one watched. He wept for his son, for the city. I learned then that courage and grief can live in the same man. There were other changes, too. The Hebrew people moved through the city with a new steadiness. They looked at us not with triumph, but with a kind of exhausted sorrow. Some Egyptians spat at them. Others avoided their eyes. I watched a woman from our street hand a blanket to a Hebrew mother. I watched my father stand in the doorway and not look away when a Hebrew man passed. There was a new respect. Pharaoh called for Moses. He called for the Hebrew leader to leave his land. The city buzzed with the news. People moved as if through fog. We packed what we could not bear to lose and left the house for the first time in days. The streets smelled of smoke and incense and something else I could not name. Loss, perhaps, or the residue of fear. We walked past houses with doors still open, where families sat in stunned silence. We passed temples where priests had stopped their rituals. When the Hebrews left, they did not march like conquerors. They moved like people who had been given a chance to go home. Some of them looked back at the city with faces I could not read. Some of them looked straight ahead. My father watched them go until they were only a line on the horizon. He did not speak. He only stood there, and I could see the years in his face, the way the sun had carved him, the way the plagues had carved us all. In the weeks that followed, the city tried to stitch itself back together. Markets reopened, though the laughter was quieter. The priests returned to their altars, but their certainty had been broken. People spoke in whispers about the Hebrew God. My mother would not go near the river for a long time. When she finally did, she stood at the bank and watched the water move. I grew up faster than I should have. The world I had known, the easy certainties, was gone. In its place was a new, raw knowledge that the world could change in a single night. My father never spoke of the Hebrew God again, not in words. But sometimes, when he thought no one listened, he would look toward the horizon where the Hebrews had gone, and his lips would move in a prayer I could not name. Years later, when I had children of my own, I would tell them the story not as a lesson in faith or in politics, but as a memory of what it is to be human in a world that can be both generous and terrible. I would tell them about the river that ran wrong, about the nights when the sky itself seemed to turn against us, about the way a city can hold its breath and then exhale a sound that changes everything. I would tell them about my brother, and about the way my father learned to weep. I do not know what gods there are, or what power moves the world. I only know what I felt, the smallness of a single life against the sweep of events, the suddenness with which certainty can be taken away, and the stubbornness of people who, even after everything, still find a way to feed one another, to share a blanket, to hold a child and whisper that morning will come.